But I
Yeah.
also believe that it's better to light a candle than curse the darkness. So we are trying. But
Yeah.
I'm not holding my breath expecting change.
Yeah. I
That's
think
the
yeah.
difference. I'll
Plan for worst, hope
yeah
for best. Kind
I'll
of.
fight till the day I die,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to be surprised if nothing happens.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm
I think that's a happy medium to
yeah,
sit in.
I'm
Yeah.
very realistic about what can or might happen.
Yeah.
Hello, nerds, and welcome back to Into the Wild's 2026 mini-series Lost in Sri Lanka. This mini-series is partnered with JetWings Eco Holidays. Over the course of 3 episodes, we cover everything from human-wildlife conflict, wildlife tourism, and land use. Any views or opinions expressed on any episode you listen to belongs to the person who said it and doesn't necessarily represent the view of anyone from Into the Wild or JetWings Eco Holidays. Right, let's get on with episode 3, the last episode of this mini-series. Hello, nerds, and welcome to the final episode, episode 3, the last episode in the mini-series for 2026 by Into the Wild, Lost in Sri Lanka. First of all, how are you? I hope you're doing absolutely solid. I hope the world news is not slamming you in the face. I hope you are managing to kind of self-soothe and get through that. Because it's a lot. But, Jesus, it's a lot. But welcome to the final episode. Now, usually you would hear a bit of back and forward here between myself and my lovely friend, campaigner, naturalist, and lovely podcaster, Nadia Sheikh. However, Nadia is off out in the world doing some great work with a new film that she is in called Our Land. I'm pretty sure it's called Our Land. Did I just get that wrong? I'd get someone to fact check that, but I'm literally sat here in my Todd. So there's no one here. But follow Nadia on social media. You'll get to see the things she's working on currently, which is why she cannot be here on the last episode of Lost in Sri Lanka, which is a great shame, and she'll be incredibly missed, more so because I don't get the opportunity to make her incredibly green with envy about the trip that I did in Sri Lanka as we talk more about this lovely country and everything within it. So before we get on to doing that, let me just say hi. You might notice, I don't know if it's still there. I've had a bit of a sore throat thing, so I don't know if you can still hear that. I feel like I've got this like little, I was going to say sexy husky voice. What is that? Is that just complimenting myself? I don't know. But it's a bit of a husky thing in my voice. I've had a cold on and off. And also I've moved flat. I'm in a new flat, which is very exciting, but my routine's all out of sync. So you would have noticed, you avid listeners to the show will notice that we've not been doing nature news, and it's purely from a time perspective. There's so much going on in the world, in mine and Nadia's professional world, in our personal world, and it just gets to the point where you're juggling lots. So that's on hiatus at the moment. But we are back here to give you the last episode of Lost in Sri Lanka. So let's do that now. So every time I sit down, right? I sit down at a table where I am now, and I look out on my new balcony over London, and I put my Sri Lanka hat back on, not literally, but metaphorically, and like put myself back in that moment to kind of get into the mood of doing these shows. And I always go, fuck, God, I want to be back. I want to go back there. It just felt right. I'm not going to say too much because I want to close this up at the end, but it just felt like such a wholesome and incredibly connected place to be to nature and to many other things. But for me, I spotted that nature connection a lot. It was absolutely beautiful, and I just want to be back there. Not that I don't have that connection here, but the places we went in Sri Lanka, I was seeing the community have that as well, and that's what I lack a lot of the time, seeing that. But it is always nice to put that hat back on and journey into it. But so far, as you know, you've listened to, I'm sure by now you've listened to the other 2 episodes. If you're not, what have you been doing? Go back and listen to the first one. And then the second one. That's how that works. Go back and have a listen. We've so far spoken about wildlife tourism, kind of the pros, the cons, the complexities, what can happen, what shouldn't happen, what we hope for the future of Sri Lanka. And we focus on one kind of case study, I guess, by a man called Dilsiri in Kalpitia, which is on the kind of northwest coast of Sri Lanka, where it's, not wildlife-based tourism, but the tourism itself is massively benefiting both the community, the fishing community there, the people, and the environment and the wildlife as well. And in episode 2, we focus more on land, about how wildlife tourism and just colonialism and the advancement of kind of Western influence, I guess, can have an impact and has had a severe impact on the indigenous community of known as the Veda in Sri Lanka. So episode 3, I was sat here going, what is this episode going to be about? So I was going back all through the interviews that we've done, going like, how this is the last one, what can we do? And I basically found a really good chat that I want to share with you. And then I sorted out another interview when I was back here in London, virtually, because that's the world we live in now. It's mad, isn't it? We can talk to anyone around the world with an internet connection. If you're lucky enough to have a stable internet connection, which sometimes even me in London, I do not have that. So that chat will feature as well. So it's going to be a bit of a rounding up episode, talking about a broad scope of everything to do with what we've spoken about already and some bits that we haven't focused on. And I will chat to you a bit more to round it up at the end. But let's waste no time. Let's go into episode 3 of Lost in Sri Lanka. Okay, so I was sat down last night reminiscing about my time on this beautiful island known as Sri Lanka. Looking back on what I'd seen, what I'd heard, what I'd tasted, God, the food, and learned whilst I was there. To be honest, my feelings on the topics we covered so far in this miniseries haven't really changed. But that's not because the people in Sri Lanka didn't convince me otherwise, or that I didn't see anything that I already knew. Not to big myself up like, oh, bro, look how smart I am. But I was already pretty settled on how I felt about wildlife tourism. Small scale and local, community centred, like Dilsiri showed us, yes. Corporate capitalist with a model making rich people richer? Nah, bruv. I do, however, always hold that little thought about flights, aviation for wildlife tourism. Visiting countries around the world in order to see wildlife obviously often involves taking a plane, in the very way I did for this trip. I guess it kind of feels contradictory to do that when I also campaign within my life for climate justice, etc., etc., etc. And I have given this so much thought, and truly, I don't think there's an answer anyone can give that will make everyone go, oh, okay, I see now. I feel in 2026, you either stop flying for good, you massively reduce, or you carry on as normal. That's it. They're the options, right? What you do with option B and C, I think, is a very important one. And one hill I'll absolutely die on is travel, meeting people or cultures, seeing different lifestyles, environments, eating different food, drinking different drinks, hearing new languages, or even better, learning new stories. All that stuff makes us human. It feeds us experiences that stay with us for life, and from my experience, makes us more empathetic, more tolerant, more caring, and more aware. And that's all really fucking important. And on the other side, my feelings for rights of indigenous people, for them to have their land, to live their way of life, was the same before and after my conversation with Ranjila and Gunabunda. I guess the difference was I felt stronger on that. And my empathy for an indigenous community that I didn't know previously was very much present. So my opinions are, I guess, more cemented in. And that is actually quite a nice place to sit. But there is one more conversation I want to share. So far in this mini-series, we've spoken to people that have on-the-ground experience because they've lived it forever. But I want to now share a conversation with someone I sat with and drank with to discuss pretty much all I could think of to ask whilst I had that time. To paint a picture, I was sat in the most beautiful homestay just 30 minutes drive from the entrance of Wilpatu National Park. We had eaten dinner, had a beer, and had just opened a bottle of arak, which is like a dark spirit from Sri Lanka, which is like a sweet whiskey. It's fit, trust me, it's fit. I was then introduced to a man called Namal. Namal now owns and manages a lodge in the local area, but he has an interesting backstory and a different type of experience in the wildlife sector. But it wasn't just Namal's experience that made it such a pleasant and interesting conversation. I think it was, I don't know, it was just the fact I was sat there with Namal, with a drink, in the evening, listening to the wildlife, sat opposite each other, having a natter. It really felt like, you know, those kind of conversations you sometimes have with people when you're exploring somewhere new in a pub and you really feel like you're getting to know them and the local area. That's what this chat was. I really feel like we were just two people chewing the fat, every so often just taking a sip of our drink, pondering, and then getting straight back into the conversation. I think that's why I love this chat and this interview so much. So I hope you get that same essence from it as well. So anyway, enough of my voice. This is the chat that I had with Namal just outside Wilpatu National Park one evening, sat at a gorgeous homestay.
Yeah, I'm Namal Kamalgoba. I'm semi-retired in the sense that I quit my corporate job and now run a property in Wilpatu on the border of the park. I've also been very active in conservation work in the past as well. Served 10 years in the Wildlife and Nature Protection Society, one of the oldest conservation bodies in the world. And now I'm a trustee of the Federation of Environmental Organizations.
Wow.
Yes, so still active in conservation.
You also wear your badges as well, because that's quite a reputation to have as someone that works also on the ground or running a lodge, right?
Yeah.
Does that help you in the day-to-day job, do you think?
I have to tread very carefully because I can't really annoy authorities. Because as a conservationist, my job is to go and poke the authorities to do their job on sometimes with them. But I also have a property, so I have to be careful that these guys have long memories and there can be consequences for the property. So I have to tread
it's like
very
you've got a seat at each table kind of thing.
I have to tread very carefully with authorities now.
So how long have you run your lodge?
Almost 10 years.
10 years.
We're going to complete 10 in December.
Nice one. And what did you know that was something you wanted to do? Was it kind of that was the plan, or did you kind of happen more organically?
No, I think from day one. Okay, so background. I grew up in Kenya.
Okay.
So I've been to properties like I had sort of modeled my property on. And I first tried to start something like this in 1996 when there were no such operations in Sri Lanka, but funding was almost impossible and I was too early in my career to have enough money to do it on my own.
Yeah, totally.
So I gave it up. And then my last job, I was in an extremely toxic environment, and for my sanity I needed to get out badly.
Well done, you.
But if I knew there's an option where you could have been even started off as a guide or naturalist, I would have never gone into the corporate world.
Yeah.
Because the corporate world was a default. I worked to earn enough money to be in the jungle. Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's like not lucky coincidence, but like you said, you worked enough to be able to be here.
Yeah.
You ended up here, and you could just get that position.
Yeah. So it was also a lifestyle change.
Nice.
Not only because I can also pursue my photography. Instead of paying my hard-earned money to go into the park, now I get someone else to pay me to guide them and go into the park.
It's a very sensible thing to do. Very sensible thing to do.
For example, this evening I really didn't have to go on safari.
Yeah.
There was a gentleman that was his job today, but I was bored. I thought, I'm here because of the park, so I went into the park with them.
What a great position to be in. So this might sound like I'm like building you up to do an advert, and I promise you I'm not. But like, how would you say your lodge or your part of your business kind of stands out? Is there things that you've learned from your previous career that you've taken into running a kind of company like this?
Some little bit from my previous career, but mostly from my conservation work. So I'm very, very conscious of my impact on that environment that I'm in. I've always told people that if at any time I feel that I'm going to impact the environment in a negative way, I'm going to close the camp.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's like a hard boundary for you.
It's definitely, I mean, we've taken every precaution we can to preserve that property. It used to be an old farmland. Now it's overgrown. We are growing trees like crazy. So at least even day will come that I will come and go, my camp will come and go, but at least a piece of property is preserved as a piece of wilderness.
Yeah, that's really nice. And so obviously the clients or the customers that are coming to your camp are then going to Ulpatu National Park. Is that the main?
That's basically it. We do have people who just come and relax or use it as a base to go to Anuradhapura, which is a historic, religious and archaeological site, but 99% it's purely the park.
So there's a question I've been dying to ask someone. I know I've only been here 24 hours, but still it's a question that it's been in my mind, and because we're looking at wildlife tourism on the whole and kind of what it can impact in a country or a region or in a community. And sometimes it's quite easy to see the successes with it, or the kind of the positive impacts. But there's people around the world, obviously with the climate crisis and kind of that being a global thing, there's people more and more concerned with countries or communities relying on people to fly for tourism. Kind of, as someone that runs a business that's reliant on that, how would you reply, or what was your kind of response to anyone that says, should we be relying on people flying around the world for tourism?
I think one of the most important ways for conservation is creating awareness, not just locally but globally. So if people don't fly in, if people don't visit parks, there's no awareness of this park exists, its importance, its importance in terms of maybe a particular species, it's important in terms of its biodiversity, and then the need to conserve it. When that park or wilderness is under threat, if no one knows it exists, no one cares.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, so for me, awareness is incredibly important. And something I did mention, I have done with 3 other friends of mine, we have done 3 coffee table books on wildlife in Sri Lanka. All the money went into conservation.
Right.
So the first book actually came into Wilpattu in 2004.
So it was going straight back into
conservation.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting that point you bring up about the awareness, because it's something we say a lot with local conservation, especially in England, especially in London where I am. You know, if people don't know about the ancient oak tree on Hampstead Heath, how are we ever going to protect it? Because no one knows about it, and you can only protect and care about what you love. So it's interesting when we talk about that from a global perspective as well. You know, it's and pretty much all the reason why I'm here anyway, because I could learn about this from interviewing people on Zoom and things, and there are different ways to do it, but sometimes to get the full picture and to really understand and to really believe, I guess, being there and seeing it is something is really impactful.
So coming back to the global thing, now for me, I've been studying the leopards of Wilpattu for the last 15 years. And my opinion, which is shared by some other proper research and data, is that this probably has the largest concentration of Sri Lankan leopards, which is a unique subspecies in Sri Lanka.
Wow.
So it makes it incredibly vital for the conservation of a subspecies.
Yeah.
When it becomes global, it becomes a global problem. If there's any threat, I want to make this Wilpattu a global issue. So if there's any issue with the park, they can ignore local voices sometimes. But if there's a global voice for it, then the need to conserve it is
the stage gets bigger, right?
The stage is so much bigger.
Yeah.
I think that is very crucial. Yeah.
That's a really interesting point. That is interesting, especially with the way our systems work in regards to conservation anyway. You know, whether we look at IUCN statuses for animals, that's a global stage. That's not countries deciding it for themselves. That's very much global. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Really, it's like if we're going to talk about a species and have them, regardless whether we're looking at a bird, a leopard, or elephant, or whether it's an insect, it's like if you want that to have the attention, you need that global attention sometimes.
Absolutely.
There was something else I really am keen to talk about, which is, and this will tie up. We've spoken about it briefly before we recorded, but is kind of how wildlife or how habitat does during times of conflict. And I'm very much someone that believes that conflict, war, military use is under-discussed in the environmental or the conservation world, even though it's probably something, and I've done only a small bit of research, I'm saying on behalf of my listeners, which is probably it's probably up there in the top 3 with the negative impacts it has, or one of the bigger causes of climate crisis and environmental loss. Sri Lanka did go through a 30-year-long, 3-decade-long conflict, civil war, which had an incredible amount of loss during that time. In terms of environmental and wildlife, what were the impacts for Sri Lanka on that?
Like as I mentioned, it's 50-50.
Yeah.
Now, Wilpattu, I can speak because I came here first in 2003 during a brief ceasefire.
Right.
In terms of the forest itself was intact, but the wildlife was completely shot out because the authorities were not here. Yeah.
Right.
I would drive the whole day and see one deer.
Wow.
If I was lucky.
And compared to what you've told me tonight.
Yeah, there's so much.
So much
has bounced back.
Yeah.
I would see one peacock, and the peacock is so terrified it will fly away from me.
Yeah.
Jungle fowls are running into the jungle so fast. I was just thinking they're going to injure themselves banging into something.
Yeah.
But the flip side is, if you look at places like Mannar, which is considered a great birding paradise, I was actually the first birder to Mannar in 2003, about a week after the ceasefire. That area never got developed because of the war, and we were able to declare it a sanctuary.
Right.
Otherwise, it would have been completely developed into sultans or prawn farms or something like that, which never happened because of the war.
Wow.
No development happened. Even parts of the forest in the northern parts of Sri Lanka are still pristine because of the war. And part of the reason it's still not getting developed, people don't know what's in there, like what ordinance is still left behind and whether you're going to blow your foot off.
Well, I was just saying, is that another thing? Because we were talking earlier about landmines and things that are like kind of, like my language, I'd call them just a hangover of conflict. It's still there, it's waiting to be found accidentally.
I have no idea. You will not find me walking in a forest which I don't see locals walking in.
That's a good bit of advice. That is a good bit of advice.
and well-used game trails.
Yes, right, okay.
Well-used game trails, especially if they're elephants.
Yeah.
Any landmines would have gone off by
They
now.
would have gone off. They would have gone off with elephants today. Okay.
No, it was bad. There were a lot of, just after the war, a lot of elephants getting blown up. But the conflict also in the north, while the forest itself was maintained well because of lack of development, both parts of the war were killing elephants because they saw it as a threat.
Right.
Especially the other side.
Yeah.
They didn't want elephants in the forest because they can't walk around peacefully.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So there's also the poaching element of...
Yeah, poaching element was bad.
Right.
So Wilpattu, everything was shut out.
Everything?
I mean, there's hardly anything. If you go, so we have these bungalows inside the park where you can go and stay. I have old slide pictures of piles and piles of bones, 5-6 feet tall, just lined up like pyramids behind the bungalows.
God, that's terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a water hole. Today, actually, there's a leopard sighting there called Urania. There's a natural spring there. It's got water right through the year. Those days when we used to go, about 20 feet on the left was just nothing but white, and everyone thought it was sand. It was just bones.
Wow. It's such a change. Has that bounced back? I mean, obviously conflict and has ended there in certainly terms of war, but is that just the conflict ending, or has further work been put into?
No, I think mostly due to conflict ending, and the fact that there is some sort of presence of the authorities who are supposed to protect it. They're terribly undermanned.
Yeah.
There's 80 people to guard 134,000 hectares or something.
Yeah,
that's not enough.
Do it,
half those guys must be office staff.
Yeah.
You have 20-30 people on the ground. Actually, they're terribly understaffed. They're undergunned. They're going around with shotguns while the poachers are going around with leftover ordnance from the war, which are automatic weapons.
Yeah.
So, but it stopped, and visitation also prevented a lot of poaching, at least in the center of the park.
Because there's no
where-
eyes on the ground. like-
Yeah, there are more eyes on the ground, and if
Yeah.
I hear a gunshot, I'll complain.
Yeah.
And they have to act on it. If I see footprints across the road, I'll complain.
Mm.
If I see a dog in the park, I know it's come with a poacher, I will complain. So there are
But
more
no one
eyes.
being allowed in there,
Yeah.
or not wanting to go in because
Yeah.
of conflict. Yeah,
Yeah,
God.
because now there's people there. There's
Yeah.
visitors like me, like global or local. There are people in there, and so at least in the middle of the park,
Mm.
there's so much protection now, to the point that the deer population has really picked up. And in the last 1.5 years, there was 12 sets of cubs that we knew of.
Wow, 12 sets.
And this is in less than 10% of the park where we have road net access to.
So
We
Lord
have
knows what's
no
happening
idea.
elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's so exciting.
11
though.
sets of cubs.
Yeah.
But also what benefited the bounce back was the last 5 years the drought has not really been prolonged.
Right, interesting.
So the mortality of the deer was
Yeah.
low.
So it's helped with, but like,
Yeah.
again, it's kept that ecosystem in a
Yeah,
balance level.
it's actually increased the deer population.
Yeah.
Usually under severe droughts, the deer population will plumb.
Plummets, yeah.
But here there's always been food. The drought has not lasted more than 2 months before.
That's amazing.
That may be part of climate change.
Yes, yeah.
That rains have come early.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because when we look at other areas of the world, it's been the reverse. You know,
Yeah.
you have people going through severe droughts or severe flooding. So
Yeah. Usually Sri Lanka, the drought goes on. In the good old days, I remember as kids, we could set our calendar on when the rains should end. October 15th. Now, November,
who knows?
September, it can rain.
Do you know what, I'm going to pivot back to that point because it's a really interesting conversation to have. But I was going to ask about the kind of perceptions and culture of people during the conflict with wildlife and maybe the natural environment compared to now. Is it, obviously there's a fear-based element, like you said, like, you know, you weren't allowed or it's just dangerous to go into these
Yeah.
areas. But have you seen much change in the Sri Lankan people on both sides of the conflict change since the conflict in their attitudes towards wildlife? Has that changed since the end of the
I
Civil
think
War?
more in terms of land usage. So
Yes.
there's more demand for the land to be given for development or agriculture. So, for example, we got areas of Mana, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Vediveltivu declared sanctuaries. Now there's an attempt to de-gazette
Right.
Vediveltivu and give it for prawn farming.
Okay.
So there is pressure on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's it, because I've been very fascinated again as I've gone to different countries when we hear like for farming or stuff like that. Sometimes for a country that's a good thing, and sometimes for a country that's a bad thing. Is that a bad thing for Sri Lanka?
The farming,
Yeah.
the way we use our land is extremely agriculture is extremely land and water intensive. We have not improved our farming methodology in over 100 years.
Well.
So we're still dependent on very old agricultural
Yeah.
practices.
Right.
And as the population grows, you need more land, more water, which is denying wildlife of land and access to water.
Yeah.
It's a problem,
Yes.
which leads to a terrible human-elephant conflict in particular.
Oh, you're leading me nicely onto the questions I want to ask. I've got to say to you, very nicely onto. So before we go on to that point,
Yeah,
I'm going to
okay.
go back to the climate one.
Sure.
Because that's climate is a huge topic because it's it's one of the 4 major contributors to wildlife loss in the
Yeah.
world. Whenever any species you look at,
Yeah.
if it's dropped, it is usually down to the same 4, which is unregulated or illegal hunting, habitat loss, the climate crisis. And on the top of my head, I can't remember the 4th one. But there's always, it's the same or pollution is the same, the 4, it's always down to. So how has the climate crisis affected Sri Lanka for where you are? Have you seen much?
From Vilpattu?
So you grew up in Kenya.
Kenya, yeah.
At what age did you come to this area?
Sri Lanka, I came back to Sri Lanka as an 18-year-old.
Okay.
I left Sri Lanka as a 4-year-old.
Okay.
But in terms of Vilpattu Institute ceasefire,
Okay.
because I couldn't come to this part, it
It
was considered a border dispute area.
yes.
So 2003 I first came here till about 2004-5, and then the last stages of the war, and immediately after the end of the war I was here.
Right.
2010 I've been here right through.
And have you? Okay. So 2010, so for 15 years.
Yeah.
Have you seen many changes in this area in 15 years? Climate or
Yeah, okay, so
climate-wise?
10 years ago when we were setting up the camp, we had an exceptionally wet year. It was an El
Right.
Nino year,
yeah.
and it rained right through the year. There was no dry season at all. And something happened to the water system in the park. there are a lot of roads that have still not emerged from being underwater since then.
Whoa, that's a
It's
wet
been
year.
10 years and the roads are still underwater. There's no access to those parts.
That is just
Yeah,
blown my mind.
and so Sri Lanka, Vilpattu also has the only natural lakes in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
There is a lake that used to dry up to a small little thing. It's flooded like an ocean right through the year. There's no dry season reduction in water. So something happened. I don't know. Water tables changed. Underground inflows and outflows changed.
Yeah.
I have no clue, but something happened.
Changed.
Something happened. And also, this also, I mean, I keep telling people we are seeing a change in the ecosystem in front of our eyes. Because when the water really came right up and flooded certain areas, it killed a line of trees. And now in some places water had receded, and those trees are now 10 years later now begin to fall into the ground. And you've created a grassland that did not exist earlier. The thick forest started there and maybe 50 meters of grasslands and then the lake. Now the grassland has proceeded another 30, 40 feet inside.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, so that's, we are
So you've
seeing an
changed the
environment change
habitat.
in front of our
Yeah.
eyes, and nobody seems to have done any studies, but I'm sure if someone looked at old satellite pictures, you can see the
The
change,
movement of
the
habitat,
change of the
yeah.
habitat. Yeah.
Which, like we said earlier ago, I think again this was off record, but when we were talking about your site, you said to me that you did say you don't want to negatively impact the environment or the biodiversity with your lodge and that, and part of that was to ensure that anything you built didn't go into the encroachment of elephant, migratory patterns and stuff. But if that stuff's happened as well, change of environments, that's going to massively impact animals' movement, surely.
Absolutely. So, for example, in the camp, it's supposed to be 8 acres. I really don't know. I'm on lease here from a local landlord. We underbrushed the property. No tree was cut down. I just cut all the shrubs that will grow back, because I want to see what the land look like, where I can place tents back. And for a guy who's terrified of elephants, I spent 3 nights in my vehicle in different locations trying to figure out where the elephants cross from. And once I figure out where the elephants cross from, I just move the camp somewhere where the elephants don't cross from.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, so there's zero conflict now.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy comes in, he eats the fallen fruits from this palm tree, and he goes off.
And we have to say, when you say the guy here,
Elephant.
because, you've shown me this video.
Yeah, it's an
For
elephant.
people listening, I'm gonna get this video off you as well to show people how close this elephant is now.
Yeah.
And he's been coming ever since the camp's been there.
Yeah, so he's probably been here before the camp.
Oh, it's kind of amazing, isn't
Yeah,
it?
but the thing is, this property, if we hadn't come, would have been cultivated by now.
Right. Yeah. So, it
So
could've
we stopped
this.
that
Yeah.
patch of small little patch of paradise, as I like to call it, our patch of heaven, has remained forested, and the trees are still growing. And as I mentioned before, we've planted so many trees, which the elephant has permitted to grow, are still growing.
The elephant's permitted to grow.
Yeah,
That's
because-
such a lovely way to phrase
Yeah,
it.
because if I put a tree in the middle of nowhere, he'll uproot it. But if I happen to eat a fruit seed and I spit it out and that grows, he leaves it alone. I have no idea why. It's grown naturally.
Hey, he's
But if I
guiding you.
plant a tree, and some of the trees I planted, I ensured elephant won't eat it,
Yeah.
and there's no fruit in it to attract the
Yeah.
elephant, but it will attract birds.
Yeah.
And this guy's uprooted most of these. And I'm like, one day I can see him walking past the middle with the plant in his trunk, and I asked him. I spoke to him and I said, "What's the deal? You can't eat this." And he looked at me like a child, like got caught, and he dropped the plant and walked off. And I'm like,
There's a relationship here that I'm fascinated to
Yeah.
review more.
I was like, "What's your problem? You don't eat this. There's nothing for you. It's not a toy."
It's amazing though. I've been like, I think, and this is again going to lead us nicely into like the human elephant or any wildlife conflict, because it is kind of you're literally living alongside these animals.
Yeah.
This isn't a fact that they are just in a national park and this is highly fenced,
No,
like
not at
Jurassic Park, and they can't get out, even though in Jurassic Park they also did. But like, like when we're looking at like, wildlife like this, what are the biggest conflicts you experience or you see from other people in this area with wildlife?
Yeah. So I travel a lot in Sri Lanka to photograph tuskers. Now, only 3% of our males carry tusks, so seeing a tusker is a bit of a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not like Africa or even
Yeah.
India where all the males carry tusks. So seeing a tusker in Sri, I've gone to really high conflict areas. Now in Vilpattu, where I live, is a village called Hunuvilagama. The human-elephant conflict happens, but nobody gets killed, no elephant gets shot. Because that village is a traditional village. It's been there for hundreds of years. They have lived with elephants right through. So that knowledge of how to deal with elephants has been passed on, which is basically make some noise and drive the elephant away. You don't shoot it. The conflict starts where you put settlers whose, if you trace back now, their grandparents came from a city or a suburb in Colombo. They've never seen an elephant. Elephant comes in, and remember, the elephant can in one day destroy 3 months' work of farm work.
Yeah.
And this is very labor-intensive work. So then what these guys are going to do is they're going to make a homemade shotgun and shoot the elephant.
Right.
And then the conflict starts. It's a spiral downwards. There's no end in sight, short of what I call local extinction of that elephant in that area. There's no way out.
Wow.
We kill about 400 to 450 elephants a year illegally. There's no legal killing of elephants, but we're talking illegal electric fences, shooting elephants, and they kill about 300 people a year.
Wow.
But in Hunnuilagama, no elephant has been killed since 2003, and only 2 people I know have been killed.
So comparatively,
Yeah.
it's wow, that's pretty amazing, because you kind of like you said, like you could have local extinction of the elephant, but you're also locally extincting that kind of traditional knowledge of how to
But
live
that's
alongside.
also changing,
Really?
because the traditional farming method is in the rainy season you cultivate the land, and then the dry season you go back home and you leave an empty field for the elephant to come in and eat what's left and the grassland that is created. But now what's happening is people are digging wells, and they're taking pumps and they're cultivating right through the year.
So increasing the conflict.
It's just going to lead to an increased conflict.
That's really
The
fascinating.
methodology of farming has changed.
So where did that methodology change? What do you know? The
I,
reason
I,
why
I
that-
think it's just cash.
just cash.
Just cash.
Just living in a different world that requires different things. That's really interesting. And is it primarily elephant conflict in this area?
In my area, it's primarily elephant conflict. Yeah, I'm sure deer and wild boars do a lot of damage as well.
But the big one is.
Yeah, big one is elephant. We will, in my area, I have zero bear human conflict because bears prefer to stay in undisturbed forest. Having said that, 2 days ago, the guests were going on safari, and near my camp, 150 meters from the camp, the bear was drinking water from the lake. So I'm like, wow, that's not really a good thing because they can be nasty.
Yeah. Which
But-
bear is it?
Yes, sloth bear.
Sloth bear.
Sloth bear.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I've seen the impact.
And because there isn't big fields here, there is very little cattle, so there's very little human leopard conflict here.
There's not big.
Yeah,
no.
but in areas where there's huge grasslands and where there are, or shrub jungle, where cattle are released, there's a huge human leopard conflict.
Right, yeah,
Because they'll take his cattle and then he'll poison the carcass and kill the
And
leopard.
kill them all. Yeah, yeah. Is that a different method? The poison, is that different in the same way that you said the kind of the shotgun with the elephants? Has that changed as
No,
well?
the leopards don't retaliate; they just disappear.
Right,
They just
okay.
get killed.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you are bordering a national park, if the park is doing well, the leopard population has nowhere to go. Leopards will come into peripheries where they'll come into conflict with farmers again.
Right.
That's what's happening in the estates, in the hill country tea estates. The leopards were always there. But now people are more mobile, which they didn't have at once upon a time. And they have more mobile, meaning they have better motorcycles and they have better tooks. The motorcycles have far better headlights than they had 10 years ago. So they're seeing more leopard, which they never saw all this time,
Yeah.
which existed. But also they've shot out and killed all the game the leopard
Would
ate.
rely on,
So now the leopard's coming in to take cattle, goats and dogs. So it increasing the conflict.
You almost want to like hold your head above and be like, I can see it happening.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? It's like maths. You can just add it all together and go, this will equal this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, so for the longest time I was in conservation with the Wildlife and Nature Protection Society, and I quit my conservation work because it was depressing.
yeah.
All I hear is bad news. It's like you're sitting on top of a cliff and you can see accident about to happen, and there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do about it. So I quit because I thought ignorance is bliss. What I don't know is not going to be hurt me. I'll be happy in my little world of Vilpattu,
Yeah.
and I'll do local conservation. If you need a water hole dug up, yeah, I can impact that directly. I'll dig up that water hole. You don't have enough money for the Bowser to go and pump water, I'll pay for that. You go and the anti-poaching unit doesn't have boots, I'll buy boots for them. They don't have caps, I'll buy bat. I'll buy their rations when they go on patrol, that's fine. I can control that. But at a national level, it became so frustrating.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, my friends sort of, twisted my arm. I'm back in conservation. I was invited for a friendly dinner, and then next
That
thing I
was
knew,
not a friendly dinner.
yeah, and
They
next
knew what they were doing.
no, it was planned. They knew I was not going to come in. And next thing, welcome to the latest trustee, and I'm like,
I'm sorry, what?
What?
What did I sign on the way in?
Yeah, I didn't sign in. I came for a drink and dinner. Yeah, so I got hoodwinked.
That's a risky thing of a drink. You got to be careful with that. Okay, so this is going to be a huge question. I don't even know if you have an answer to this, but I have to ask: is with conflicts, with let's go with conflicts because that is quite an immediate risk to wildlife and to people as well. With you not being able to muster up the solution, being in part of the kind of oversight legislation world, what do you think the solution actually is? What would be your plan?
Okay, if you look at the human elephant conflict, there is no removing the conflict anymore. We are too deep down that rabbit hole but you can mitigate it, you can reduce it.
Yeah.
The problem is, it's not a short-term solution. And politicians and people on the ground, the villagers, they want immediate.
Yeah, right.
They want visible signs. So we keep on persisting with, I think Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So we insist on elephant drives that don't work. We insist on putting electric fences, which the elephants break every day. Now we're insisting on trenches, which have failed in every other country. So but the long-term solution, there's a national plan out there on how to mitigate it, but nobody wants to do it because it's a long-term solution.
Yeah.
And the politicians are looking, by the time this happens, I'll be out of power.
I was going to say, they'll be out, they'll be gone. It'll be someone else's win.
Somebody else's win. And I can't show the people I'm doing something. They want, electric fence coming, I did my bit for you as my constituents. And the people are happy, electric fence came, it's not maintained, the elephants are breaking through. And anyway, the elephants have learned how to break it even if it's maintained well.
Yeah.
So there's no short-term solution. So it's, for me, a very defeatist mentality is enjoy it while you can.
Wow. Yeah. Really?
That's why I take my pictures. I'm hoping that one day when I'm dead and gone, somebody will find my slides and my digital hard drive and think, oh wow, we had this in Sri Lanka.
I've got to be honest.
It's
I've
very sad.
interviewed hundreds of people, and I've never had someone. I've always had people going, "We can do what you have," but it's the first time, and I'm not criticising this, but I've never had someone going
frustration.
like, "I enjoy it where you can." I've never had anyone say.
It's frustration.
Yeah, well, that's
it's really
powerful.
frustration because I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
But I also believe that it's better to light a candle than curse the darkness. So we are trying. But I'm not holding my breath expecting change.
Yeah,
that's the difference.
Plan for worst, hope for best.
I'll fight till the day I die.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be surprised if nothing happens.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a happy medium to
Yeah, I'm very realistic about what can or might happen.
Yeah.
Because Sri Lanka is not in a position we can conserve wildlife for the sake of conservation. We still have there's people need to make a living. The people along the national parks, they need to survive as well.
Yeah.
So you need to put the human side as well. You need to consider that as well. You can't just say we have to conserve Vilpattu because it's beautiful and the future generations need it.
Yeah. But the current generation.
Yeah, we need to survive now.
Yeah.
Forget the future generation. We'll figure that out if we need it now. So that's the problem.
That's also interesting though, because again, when we look at the climate movement and stuff like this, it's always talking about future generations. But we can actually, I think most nations, even in the Western world, can suddenly go, well, no one's thriving now. Like, it'd be really good to live very well now, actually. And I think, like you said, like people need to earn a living, need security, need shelter, need water, need food, all these things, and they need it at an easy resource because that's a right.
Yeah.
Right. So
So, in a lot of places, the issue I have is that, say, a national park, they see visitors going by, but they get no economic benefit from the park, or any other benefit. It's just some bloody park for the rich people and the foreigners to come and enjoy. So you need to make sure that there's an impact for the locals. Now, if you look at Vilpattu, a lot of the guys are now running jeeps, so they're making money from the park. But also in terms of the camp, it's a conscious decision that before it became a buzzword that I buy everything local.
yeah.
And I keep reinforcing to these people that I'm here because of the park. I'm buying your vegetables, I'm buying your chicken, I'm buying your fish at these quantities because of the park. If you do anything to damage the park in terms of eat all its wildlife, or demand more access to agriculture, or you're illegally doing something in the park, the wildlife goes away, my visitors go away, I go away, and then you lose your main income. So I keep trying to enforce the view because I want the local economy also to have a benefit from the
Yeah,
park.
absolutely. Yeah.
And also I have, of my staff of 5, 4 are local. I want to make sure that they are part of the, they know why,
They see
who
it.
butters their bread. It's a
Yeah.
park, not me.
Yeah.
I'm here. I mean, honestly, 10 years, no profit. So I'd love the camp to make money, but it's not the objective.
Yes. Yeah. God, that's the world we want, right?
No, I was lucky that in the previous,
Yes,
my
yeah.
previous life, as I call it, I had enough investments to take me through. But I'm sure a lot of the other properties you see around here don't have that luxury.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And also my shareholders are still doing well in their corporate world.
Yeah.
They have enough resources. So this is just a nice place for them to come and chill sometimes.
Yeah. I'm going to end on a question that is a classic Ryan question to ask anyone to do with wildlife. What is your favourite animal to see in Wilpatu National Park?
Okay. Because I'm studying the leopards, I guess leopard.
Yeah.
But I get a bigger kick out of seeing a tusker.
Really?
Yeah, yesterday or day before I was at the camp giving tea to the guests who had just come back on safari, and the safari jeep was going back home, and they called the camp and said there's a tusker drinking water, and I just said bye to the guests. I just make sure that my manager Patrick was there to sort things out. I got into the vehicle and I went, so I actually contemplated, can I walk there fast enough? That's it.
How can I get there quick?
Yeah, he was gone. I knew it's going to be gone, so I drove, took
Amazing.
the pictures I wanted, and came back, and they were still having tea. So
You're
I was
fine.
like,
I wasn't
"Why?"
missed.
Yeah,
I wasn't missed.
I just went to the loo. So yeah, so
An amazing reason.
yeah, so tuskers give me a real kick.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But also as a birder, I mean, if someone says some, once in a lifetime bird has turned up
Yeah.
in the park,
Yeah.
I'll spend a lot of effort to try and do it. See that bird.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I can't wait to go in tomorrow.
No, you'll enjoy the park.
Yeah,
You're at the wrong end of the season, so it's still a bit crowded and a bit dusty.
but I'm with the right
But the
people.
park itself
Yeah.
is just stunningly beautiful.
I can't wait. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be a real, I think, an eye-opener, but just also just a visually beautiful day.
That's
Yeah.
why if this is a place I want to die in, this is it. The park is just stunning.
Do you see what I mean about that chat? Do you see what I mean? I just loved listening to that back. Namal is such a... I don't know, I don't have the words. Like, it was just a joy to be in his presence and to talk to him about his passion, his love for wildlife, for conservation, for his community, but then also hearing his real vulnerability about, I guess, his lack of hope. And again, I've said it on this show and on Into the Wild countless times throughout the last 6 years. Who the am I to question someone's feelings and level of hope, or I don't know, their prediction, I guess, of what's going to happen. Of course, I hope he's wrong. It goes without saying, and he hopes he's wrong as well. But it was just absolutely wonderful to get to have that very real chat with him about the area, about the work he does, and about his true feelings on that. Right, okay, we are going to start wrapping up this mini-series. But before we do, I've got a few more questions for a good friend of mine and the guy that really helped this mini-series come together, who's Chandika. Chandika, you heard on episode 1. He's been a real pillar of wanting to get this mini-series made about Sri Lanka. So I had a few more questions for him. The question started with me asking, quite simply, and it's a question we probably already asked on the podcast, but after everything we've explored and gone through, I wanted to ask Chandika, what are the pros and cons of wildlife conservation in Sri Lanka, especially considering its massive boom in the last 15 years since the conflict ended? And this is what he had to say.
I mean, in those few years, wildlife tourism has picked up. Like, I think So 2018 was probably our best year for tourism after the conflict ended. So that is kind of like the base, the benchmark that year is what people use. So 2018, the stats say that 50% of people who came to Sri Lanka visited some national park. So it's pretty much everyone who comes goes to either Yala or something, or a park like that, one of the popular places. And it has picked up, like there's like almost 3 billion rupees worth of revenue coming just from the parks itself. Actually, just from Yala itself. So you can see how much wildlife tourism has picked up. That has created jobs. It has protected the parks. There's always people inside. And not only foreign tourists, like the local tourists as well. It has become a very popular thing to go into a park and take a picture of a leopard or one of the rarer bird species, or a tusker, if you consider elephants. So even the locals have started traveling a lot since the end of the conflict in 2009. So wildlife tourism has become really popular. It's created a lot of jobs. The guys who are running the safari jeeps and things like that, they've all got, managed to be able to buy 2-3 vehicles now. Drivers have become their own bosses. They've got their own vehicles. Different things like dolphin watching. People are, fishermen, stop their fishing practices. They're doing dolphin and whale watching. Poachers have stopped poaching and, driving safari vehicles or becoming volunteer guides. So there's so much pros to it. There are also cons to it, whereas it comes to overcrowding. Certain places are sadly overcrowded. Yale is overcrowded. Mirissa for whale watching is overcrowded. And it is slowly spreading to the other areas as well, which is the downside of it. But it's still not too late to rectify it. So there are people who are trying to work on rectifying it, so it still can be rectified. But yeah, wildlife tourism has, I guess it's hit a peak in Sri Lanka, where so many people are traveling now, just for the wildlife as well. And it's created the good and the bad. So we're trying, it's best to weigh and try to strike a balance of both. So yeah, hopefully that happens in the next couple of years.
I really wanted to get to the nitty gritty with it with Chandika. We'd spoken about this topic countless times, both in the field, in the hotels, on WhatsApp since, in the car, just constantly talking about the pros and cons of conservation. But I really wanted to know, for him personally, what were his main concerns going forward with Sri Lanka having this boom of popularity, of suddenly having these increased numbers of people coming? What was his main concerns about that happening?
What concerns me is the carrying capacity. Obviously, we're a small island, so our protected areas are small when compared to places like India and Africa. So they obviously have very limited carrying capacities, and we are almost at the breaking point of carrying capacities for some places because there's so many people visiting it. So that is my worry, that carrying capacity will spread to all the other areas as well, and which will eventually create a situation where people just don't want to go to those anymore. And that will become a problem for not only the wildlife but also the people who are working in the industry and who depend on this for their livelihood. So I hope that bubble doesn't burst, and hope we can find better ways to manage these carrying capacities. So my biggest concern is that overcrowding and the fact that people are being sent there when they don't probably really need to be there. Like I think we saw some tourists who were sleeping, or they were just taking selfies or while we were on safari, and they really didn't look like they wanted to be there. They were just there because it's in the itinerary. So if we can figure out ways to minimize that, then we can even increase the, you can market it as a higher end experience for people who really love wildlife, and they do really want, they will pay that amount. If they want to experience that, they will. And there are people who are willing to do it, and they're, the true people who really care about the wildlife and who really want to see it, and not the tourists who just come and tick the boxes and take selfies and things like that. So yeah, the biggest worry is that it'll overrun and the capacity will burst, and it'll turn our national parks into more like how those safari parks that you have where you have like tame animals. So I hope it doesn't get to that point.
The other thing that I've heard lots about, and this is both, I heard it on the ground, and we heard it in episode 1 with Dilsiri, was the waste management issue within Sri Lanka. This has been kind of a conservation global news story. There's been many images of elephants traipsing through piles and piles of plastic and waste, and they're really upsetting images to see, and you kind of worry about this and think, how much is this going to be impacted by wildlife tourism? So again, I just thought I'd ask Chandika personally, as someone that works in this field, with the issue of waste management, how do these two issues, wildlife tourism, waste management, pollution, how do they interlink? And is this a double problem?
Waste management is, I wouldn't say it's a tourism issue, because I think a lot of the tourist companies, a lot of the hotels, people have got that. They've got it right. They've kept single-use plastic to a minimum. Even if they do use plastic, they've got places to send them to recycle them. There are companies that do it and take it up. Even food waste is recycled. Hotels have biomass boilers. Like especially, this is an example, JetWing hotels. I think they've got it right when it comes to their waste management. It is managed very, very well. I would say almost perfectly. And even if you take the smaller places, you will have tourists coming in. Even the backpackers are very conscious about this. They will not carry their plastic water bottles. They use refillable water bottles. You see tourists picking up plastic. So I think on a tourism scale, we've got our waste management right. And then you have people like Dilsiri and Kitesurfing Lanka taking it to a different level with, bringing in the plastic, getting in their own recycling machines and trying to, make things from ocean plastics and things like that. So I think the tourism industry has got it right in certain scales. I would say at the higher end scale and the lower end, the very lower end scale. Where you have people who are backpackers, people who are driving the tuk-tuks, who are conscious of the environment and the plastics that you use. The worrying sector is that middle sector, the mass tourism. I don't want to mention any countries, but there are certain countries people come in bulk and in mass, and they expect their plastic water bottles. They want all kinds of things in plastic wrappers and shopping bags and things like that. So that segment is the one that's the problem, whereas the higher end and the lower end are not. They've got it right. So if we have better ways to manage, I think we need better ways to manage that middle segment with the water bottle. It's the most plastic waste would be the water bottles. That would be the biggest. Whereas most of the hotels have stopped single-use plastic, and I think the government has brought in a rule now where you have to pay for your shopping bag. It's a very small amount. It doesn't really amount to much, but it is a step in the right direction. But if you look at the pollution, the polluting, the garbage dumping, you've got to blame most of the locals for it. And then it's not the tourism industry. The tourism industry is trying to rectify it. Whereas, it's the people who need a bit more education on that side of things.
So my next question was something I hadn't even asked Chandika. I didn't ask him when I was there, and I haven't asked him on WhatsApp since. So considering I had this opportunity interviewing him again on Zoom, I thought, you know what, I'm going to ask this now. I guess we hadn't actually thought or considered the kind of stories we were going to hear until we were there. And that's kind of how I make my shows and how Into the Wild does it. I don't always overly plan. I think if you do that, you only find the things you want to find. I like finding these accidental little nuggets of stories that take us down a path that we didn't realise we were going to. We always knew we were going to meet with the Indigenous community. That was always booked in and that was always planned. But again, I saved my questions till the last minute. I wanted to know if Chandika was hit by that. I certainly was. I wasn't expecting to hear what I heard, and I don't know how you as listeners heard when you heard the stories from Gunabanda and Ranjila.
Yeah, it hit me really hard. Since our trip, I've gone down to Gala a couple of times. I haven't been to Mahyanganir. But it hit me really hard. It's like, oh, I was not honest. Honestly, I wasn't very aware of this is what exactly happened to them. That it was the national parks that created this problem for them, and then they've been pushed around and moved around, and now how I felt bad that their culture and their language and it's keeping afloat, I would say, barely, because of them showing it off to tourists. Like, I felt the last time I went there, I was like, no, their culture, the language, it needs to be saved in a different way. It shouldn't be a tourist attraction that's saving it. And I was like, no, I don't want to see them dancing in front of me. And this is my personal view. This is what hit me. No, it really hit me really hard. It's like, oh no, they're the owners of this land. They were here probably before all of us, and they're just now a tourist attraction, which is not how it should be. They need to be given their due, and someone needs to help them save their language, teach it to their children. So it really hit me hard when I saw them dancing. I was like, no, this is not what it is. It shouldn't be. That dance is a traditional dance they do before the harvest festival, or before they harvest, or they need to be doing that in their village before they do their harvesting in their own lands, and not a piece of land that was just given to them. So yeah, it really hit me hard.
It was interesting to hear that it had hit him as hard as it had hit me, but I also wanted to know, was he expecting that? He set out our itinerary. He knew where we were going. Was he expecting that level of conversation?
No, I wasn't expecting it. I thought we would have some conversations about wildlife tourism and, talk about places and animals and things like that. But then when we started having those conversations, we talked about so many interesting topics, like the indigenous people, then land use, and then tourism, pollution, and then we met all these interesting people that, the conversations came through. So that it was like a real eye-opener as well, with different like the things that we spoke about. And yeah, it kind of made me look at tourism differently as well. It's like, okay, what do we exactly what do we want to give our clients and things like that. Sometimes I feel like we want to give them what I would like to go and see and how I would like to experience it, and then they would also enjoy it. I'm pretty sure they would enjoy it. And yeah, so that the thing was a real eye opener. I wish at some point I could do something for them to help them out, develop their, keep their culture and their traditions going as they were intended to, not as a tourism product.
Okay, so my last question for Chandika, and my last question on this mini-series for any guest that's featuring, is that if he wanted to be able to talk to the world about his country, about this beautiful island, this mesmerizing place, full of different landscapes, wildlife, stories, people, recipes, food, the food. If he could just have just this few minutes to talk to the world about this country, what would he say?
Yeah, so Sri Lanka, it's a small island. It's got a lot of sunshine. The recent past has got a lot of rain as well. But there's so many different places to visit, and there are ways and means to do it ethically and do it right. We want people to visit. We want people to come, but we want people to experience it in the right way, not just randomly drive around like headless chicken. Just have a plan. Think about what you want. Think about what you would like. Think about who you would want to go with, what type of person. I think we had experience, like I some of the experiences we did, the So we walked up to that cave, and the leopard was sleeping there. Like, not a lot of people would do that, but I love to see animals like that. And I thought, okay, maybe these guys also might like to see it. We will tell them, of course, of the dangers, but obviously we take precautions. We had our sticks, if you remember. Yeah. So, and then again, a couple of weeks after you left, we took another group up to the cave, and there was a different leopard sleeping on the same rock, and everybody just loved it, and we didn't want to disturb it or anything, so we just let it sleep, and we sunk back down, and we came back out, and we talked about it a lot again, and it was again a first for a lot of people. So yeah, come to Sri Lanka, but look at how you really want to do it. It is portrayed as a cheap place. Like, it's very cheap for you to come and travel, but are you really experiencing the proper Sri Lanka? Like, you're not meeting, like, you need to meet a guide, right, and learn about him and learn from him and understand. There's so much information going on the internet that you can get, but that personal touch that you get from that individual who's trying to explain and show the joys of our country, you won't get that from. So yeah, please do come. It's a lovely country. The people are nice and friendly. But think about how you want to do it, and think about where you want to go. I would say, kitesurfing Lanka, awesome place to be. Because they're doing all the right things, not only giving you a good experience, not only giving you good food and a comfortable room and service, but they're also giving the environment, the mangroves, and you also can learn while you're there. Whereas if you're just staying in a normal place, you're not learning anything. You're just like a normal city hotel or things like that. So that, even JetWing hotels, like, you learn so much when you stay at JetWing hotels, because they do so much for the community as well as the environment. And not only JetWing, there are so many other hotel chains in Sri Lanka that do that. So yeah, come to Sri Lanka, visit, do it in the right way, meet the right people, find out, these podcasts are going to help you for sure. So yeah, I think that's what I got to say. We need people to come visit, but the proper way. And Sri Lankans are always willing to help and are on hand to help you do things the proper way. Even if it's just a random person on the road, they're willing to help.
Okay, nerds. Well, how do I end this? There's no script here, by the way. There's really not. I'm going off piece. Okay, well, first of all, thank you hugely to Chandika for answering those questions, but also for giving myself and our creative producer Daisy Moss, who came with us to capture all the photos, the videos and stuff. A huge thank you to him and his team for bringing us to that gorgeous country to be able to produce this mini-series. We've covered a lot. We've covered in just 3 episodes: wildlife tourism, the pros and cons, land, its impact both on wildlife but also on people, wildlife tourism's impact on wildlife and people. We've human wildlife conflict, just so much. And as your host, that kind of puts myself back in the mindset of when I was there. It's quite an emotional space to be in, if I'm honest. I know that's not me being wanky about it. It's kind of, I miss it. I really miss being there. It's a country that really captivated me. It really, I didn't want to leave. So when I was 19, many moons ago, I saved. I worked for a year in Tesco and saved and travelled the world. It was amazing. I did so many countries, and when I came back 7 months later, I went into almost like a form of depression, right? Because I was so like, I've just had these experiences. They're incredible. I travelled through China. I went through Thailand. I went up to the jungle of Australia. It was incredible, and I wanted to tell everyone, but no one really gave a shit. They were interested for a bit, but not massively. And for the first time, nearly 16 years later, coming back from Sri Lanka, I had that same feeling. It felt like I had travelled properly. It felt like I had experienced a country, its land, its people, its wildlife, its food, its drink, its smells, its sights, its sounds. I'd experienced all of it in just 11 days. And I came back and I just felt sad to not be there anymore. Maybe there's more to that. I don't know. I've not depthed that. I've not deeped it. I've not dug deeper. But maybe there's more to that. Maybe my conversations with people hit me harder than I thought. That, when I went through the fucking depressing place that is passport control at Heathrow Airport, I hadn't actually considered or processed the full weight of the conversations that I'd had. I don't know. But I really enjoyed being there. And I really enjoyed seeing the level of connection to wildlife and to nature. There was a moment when we were in Sinaraja, which I think is how you pronounce it. Great birding spot. Saw a Sri Lankan frogmouth. That was sick. There was a moment there where we were being guided round and our guide was showing us the different plants and how they eat them and why they eat them and what they do for you. From joint care to making your blood stronger or your circulation better. And I loved that, right? That made sense to me. And we have pockets of that here in England, but we not like that. It wasn't the same. So I don't know what my closing message is. I'm not going to stand here and say go to Sri Lanka. I want to campaign for climate justice. I don't want to tell you to get on a plane. So I guess my message is I'm going to tell you that a lot of people that I met in Sri Lanka were connected to the land and its inhabitants, whether it be flora or fauna. And I urge you to not only be connected yourself to that in your country, but try to pass that on to others, I guess. Because I thought I already was when I went to Sri Lanka. But then when I came back, I took a bit of Sri Lanka with me and have tried to instill that into my life going forward. It was a wonderful country with wonderful people. And it's an experience that is going to stay with me for the rest of my life. Including seeing a leopard on foot, which, fuck me, I keep forgetting that's happened in my life. Nerds, listen. I have loved doing this miniseries, as has Nadia. And we are going to be on a bit of hiatus for a bit of a pause. There's lots going on in the world, lots going on in, like I said at the beginning, professional, personal lives. There's lots going on. So we're going to take a bit of a pause. I'll put some stuff on social media and I might do a little solo episode just to give a bit more information. But as always, follow us on social media. You know where we are. If you want to drop us an email or a message on there, please do. It's always lovely to hear from all of you. I'll be in touch soon. I'm not stopping into the wild. For God's sake, I'm not stopping into the wild. But I will be quiet for a little bit. Look after each other. Call your parents, tell them you love them. Call your friends, tell them you love them. Go find all the spring flowers that are popping out. Big love from me. And I will speak to you very, very soon.